Hello everyone and welcome to another flight in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Today's video is rather different in that it's going to be a tutorial kind of video of the approach into Skardu airport on the Airbus A320, which is a route that is flown by Pakistan Airlines from Islamabad airport over there. Now, it is a rather complex procedure in that the airport itself is in a very mountainous area with very high terrain around, and the margins for error are very low. And of course, I wasn't able to find any charts for either departures or arrivals into this airport, but I was able to find a rather comprehensive document outlining how these kinds of procedures are carried out. Now we are currently climbing out of runway 28 left out of Islamabad International Airport, and we are starting in the air today because I don't really want this video to be too long if I include the ground part, and the tutorial part is going to be rather long. So we are going to focus today on the operation into the airport itself, as that is rather complicated. The flight itself is only about an hour or so, and the preparation actually has to start during the departure because there's just quite a lot to go through for a tutorial kind of video at the very least. So 9500, we are just going to switch off the landing lights and the seatbelt sign and go to our cruising altitude of 310. And we are not using any ATC today, not even beyond ATC, because I don't think it's able to handle that kind of approach. So if we just have a look at our operational flight plan, Pakistan 451 is our call sign, cost index 49, climbing cruise altitude of 310. And most importantly, we are going to check, if we go to the routing, arrival is going to actually file 32 right, but we are going to land on 14 right into Islamabad because 32 right is not favored due to high terrain. Then in terms of the weather over there, well, of course you can see Islamabad, poor visibility because apparently smoke over there, but we have some cloudy weather and calm winds in Skardu. But this was kind of a while ago when we found the operational flight plan. I don't know whether the weather will be the same when we get there, but we will just use the same weather. I don't think we are going to get anything if we just request for meta information from Skardu. So we are climbing now to our cruising altitude, so let's set the altimeter, and yeah, that's nothing is available. So let's have a look at the weather chart itself, how the route looks like. So Islamabad and then to Skardu, going through navigating those terrains. But what you'll be interested in is the Skardu operations manual. This is the document I was able to find on the internet. There are no charts or anything like that as far as I could find. And this document was last updated May 2025, so I think it's quite good for use. And it's a long document. It's 57 pages, but I do recommend that you read it entirely because it gives a lot of context for some of the procedures that we are going to have to add to our flight in order to do the approach. Now, there is quite a lot of description in here, and you can see some of the sketches as well, delta, BIREP, and how to descend into the valley and how to navigate and what flight levels you need to be at and when to set your flaps and so on and so forth. And as you can see, of course, the airport is accessible. Yeah, that's the airport over there. It's accessible either via Indus Valley or Shinga Valley, but today's approach is going to be on the Indus Valley because Shinga Valley doesn't have any waypoints in there, and if you enter your own and you make a mistake, then you are in trouble. So yeah, while I do recommend that you read this in its entirety, I don't recommend that you follow this particular document while doing the approach. What I do recommend is that you make your own notes or use some kind of AI in order to distill the document into a nice handy short checklist like this, like that I have done. I have done my own notes and I use those to cross-check and make sure that the AI didn't forget any critical step that or anything that I believe would be a critical step, and that came down into a neat and handy a 4-page document, which I also just imported into my Phoenix aircraft in here. So let's start with the pre-flight prerequisites. Landing weight is 65.3 tons, and they mentioned this mostly because there are no refueling facilities in Skardu according to that document, and in that case you then need to do tankering, which means you need to carry the fuel for going there and coming back. But you are also advised to use Islamabad as your alternate airport, which in which case we are then going to alternate fuel is then going to bring you, it's going to be enough to do the return flight as well. Now for our flight plan today, we do have our landing weight is, let's see, our landing weight today is predicted to be, let's see if we have it here, 63.36 or 63.4. So we are just going to take that as 63.3 and we are going to meet this requirement. Then in terms of visibility, we are looking at 6 kilometers or above and 3 to 4 octaves of scattered clouds, because you want to get some visibility when we are doing the arrival. Then we are going to do a couple of things on our FMC in order to make sure that we are well prepared for the arrival. First thing we are going to do is speed 220 knots by Delta, and we are going to need to enter this altitude of 21,500 feet by BIRAB and reduce speed to 170 knots and 15,500 feet by SANAM. And these things are not already on the flight plan, so we're not gonna have to enter them. Starting with, of course, the speed restriction to 20 at Delta. So Delta speed 220, so speed 220, we're going to insert that and insert. And then the next one is going to be BIRAB at 21,500. So BIRAB is 21,000, actually, yeah. So BIRAB 21,500. Yeah, 21,500 is set. That's going to be at that altitude. And next is we are looking at SANAM 170 knots, 15,500. SANAM speed 170 knots and 15,500. And that is set and at or below. Yeah, that's what we are going to do. Then we need to add some route modifications, but first, before that, let's rather check whether that is entered properly. So SANAM, so Delta speed 220 knots, BIRAB 215, and SANAM 155 and 170 knots. Then we are going to need to do some route modification where we need to enter a 4 nautical mile waypoint before BIRAB, and we are going to use this point to begin our descent between BIRAB and SANAM. We are going to make it a PPD point, BIRAB 283 4 nautical miles. You won't find this 283 nautical mile on the document, but it's because you will see that between BIRAB and SANAM we are going to have a track of 103 degrees, and once you add 180 to go to the opposite side, we are going to get 283. So let's add that waypoint. So new waypoint, and we are just going to give BB4, which is going to be based on BIRAB 283 4 nautical miles. PBD point and insert, or store that. And we are going to go fix info and BB4. So let's see what that looks like. So it should be just before BIRAB from delta, and there we have it. So there we have it. So that's where we are going to start our descent to Sanam. Then the next one is going to be a 0.1 nautical mile before center fix for runway 14, and it's supposed to be entered using BIREB 141 11.9 PBD point, but also the center fix point is 5 nautical miles away from the runway, so you could also just use the runway threshold as the fix, and then you say 5.1 nautical miles, but for now let's enter it as it is here. So what are we going to call that? We are just going to call it, let's say we're going to call it 14 right 51. That's going to be a 51 nautical miles, or 5.1 nautical miles, sorry, and it's going to be BIREB. They said is 141 11.9, 141 11.9 PBD point, and store. So then we go to fix info and we go 14 right 51, and we should be able to see that just on around the center fix. There it is. So it's a little bit offset because it's based on runway 14, which I think it's a bit of a change because we are going to runway 14 right, and then from there we are supposed to keep the discontinuity. Now we need to add a 5 nautical mile leg from Sanam on a track of 089, but that we are just going to insert it as a fix info as well without having to add a waypoint. So we're just gonna say SD for Sanam and 089 as the track and the radius of 5 miles. So what that's going to do is going to draw a ring around the Sanam of 5 miles. So let's see how that looks like. So that's Sanam, and that's the 5 nautical mile ring. So basically it's saying that after you reach Sanam, we're going to need to follow that track that's going to get us into the further into the Indus Valley. When then on the 5 miles, I think we are going to need to make that 180-degree turn, as you are going to see according to the procedure here. So preparation now before Delta. So we're going to need to have the APU started by Delta below 250,000, 250 feet, flight level 250, and we need to have the checklist for 10,000 feet completed by Delta as well, and we are going to need to reduce our speed to 220 knots by Delta. I believe we have done this before, so let's just make sure that Delta has that 220 knot speed restriction, and that is set. Then we are saying that Delta is a critical phase, and we are going to need to maintain flight level 215 from Delta to BIREB. And what we will then do is we will then say Delta, and we are going to insert that 215 restriction as well, and we're gonna say in or below, at or below, and then so Delta to BIREB. So let's see, BIREB, we're gonna need to have that as well. So BIREB also flight level 215, that is set. And if you have a look at that, that is also 215 over there. And then it says that after crossing Delta, we are going to need then to reduce our speed, so that the ground speed is going to be not more than 325 knots. So we're going to need to reduce adjust our indicated airspeed in order to maintain this. Then when we arrive at BIREB, we are going to want to have the approach checklist completed, and the transition level is flight level 230. So performance flight level 230 is the transition level, and that is set. So we said also QNH is 1024 according to our operational flight plan over there, and we are going to fill in the rest. So then says that this one is just when to set a QNH in order to make sure that you avoid the terrain, and we are gonna then turn southeast at Byreb into the Indus Valley, which is actually from Byreb to Sanam. Then from there we are going to then target, if we are going to start our descent by Byreb, we are going to want to do 1800 feet per minute, or we can start the descent at 4 nautical miles at Byreb, and this is the BB4 waypoint that we have created. So as you can see, we can either start the descent at Byreb and target 1800 feet per minute, or we can start at BB4 and target 1500 feet per minute. I think we are going to want to start our descent early, possibly here at 4 nautical miles before Byreb, and target 1500 feet per minute in order to reach 15,500 feet overhead Sanam. So overhead Sanam, we are also going to want to reach 15,500 feet per minute, and that is already set. Good, and now we have to make a weather decision by Sanam. So if weather conditions are not we are not in visual, weather is not good, then we are going to have to climb back to flight level 215 and divert. But if we commit to the landing, then we are going to need to maintain 15,500 feet and level off at that altitude until we cross Sanam and select flaps 1 and reduce our speed to the green dot speed, or rather F speed, so to say. Then after crossing Sanam, we then continuing the approach, tracking to the heading to fly between the Kidney Hills and terrain on the right. This is of course the one that they are talking about here, the track from Sanam. This is the track that they are referring to, and that's going to take us between those hills. Then after following that track, when we are following that track, we are then going to select flaps 2, and that's going to decelerate us to between 160 to 170 knots in order to navigate that valley, because there is a 180 degree turn that will be coming up that's going to take us downwind of the runway. Now we are going to then continue our descent to 9,300 for the downwind, but what they are suggesting is that the descent is going to be maybe rather steep, and because of the workload, you should target to lose 3,000 feet on the easterly heading. So while you are following this track set, then you're gonna want to come to 12,500, then make the 180 degree turn. Then once you have done the 180 degree turn, then you lose the other 3,000 feet and descend to 9,300 feet, which is 2,000 feet AGL. Okay, then once you are there and you have joined the downwind and you are at 9,300, then you can go gear down and flaps 3 and fly that speed. Now you can either do a flaps full or a flaps 3 landing. It is recommended to do a flaps 3, they are saying, because it says got a better go around performance. But if you are too worried about the approach speed, then you can do a flaps full approach. Now once you have base and final, you can then turn 330 degrees once you have reached the ridge towards the village, and once you have cleared that ridge, you can turn to a heading of 350, and then you will target to do that 180 degree turn, descending at 700 feet per minute, and landing checklist must be complete by then. So once you reach the village, you're gonna go autopilot off, flight directors off, and bird on, and you are gonna wanna do that left turn on a 30 degree bank, and it says that you should keep the tail of the bird on the horizon. Now this is probably going to be easier said than done, but the whole idea of doing this is that it's probably going to keep you on that 700 feet per minute descent, and it is going to also keep you on that 30 degree bank. Now I just want to show you on the document what that PFD is going to look like. So this is what they are referring to. So here is what it's going to look like. There's your bird. You want the tail to be on the horizon for the rest of the turn, and then when you come back, it's going to be on the you are going to roll out at 8,300, which is 1,000 feet AGL. So by then you would be lined up with a runway. What we want to do as well is we want to do a runway centerline extension. So we are just going to go and say fix info, and we are gonna go OPSD runway 14 right, and it's going to be on 324 radial, and that should extend the runway center line there. Now of course we do have the center fix point, but we are not going to be able to see that once we are in the valley over there. Now let's see, do we have everything? So Delta set up, BIREP is set up, Sanam is set up, and we are pretty much set up. Now if we need to go around, we then looking at maintaining the runway heading and then repeat that track. So we follow back into the valley and then turn around around that hill and then climb to 11,500 and accelerate to 160 to 170 knots for valley maneuvering, and that is pretty much it. Now as you can see, top of descent is already coming up, so it is a short flight and tutorial is quite long. So let's set up the performance page here. So temperature, they said, is -1, I think, or was it -2? Let's see. So they said it's -1 and wind is calm. And then barrel here, we are just going to set 8,300 because we don't have any charts, and that is good. And we are going to do a config 3 landing, which we are also going to set here. Next, we are going to want to check the arrival performance or the landing performance, and of course we don't have any meta, but the weather is 00, enter that. Temperature is -1, enter that. QNH 1024, enter that. And landing weight is 63.3, we said. Let's say 63.4 realistically, and that's going to give us low auto brake because the runway is kind of nice and long. Now this weather is actually not looking good over there. I hope that we'll be able to clear that. I hope that we are gonna be able to clear this haze here, otherwise we will be in trouble. Okay, and with that I think we have pretty much done our checks. There are no charts to see, so let's see, do we have any weather information that we can get? Doubt we'll get anything. If the weather is not good, for the sake of the tutorial, might want to just clear it up for the clouds, but I think we are going to be okay. So retrieving the meta information, and I doubt we are going to get anything. I really don't think we are going to get anything. Yeah, nothing's coming. Okay, the weather is looking rather okay, and top of descent is coming up, and that means we want now to descend to 21,500. So 21,500, which we want to then do before Delta, and we are gonna want to slow down as well. To 220 knots. Yeah, the weather is clearing up, so layer of clouds is okay for our purposes. Now as you can see, we now have to do the descent and slow down, and as you can see, it looks like we are gonna have to level off at 21,500 feet, somewhere probably between Delta and Byreb. But I wouldn't be too worried yet, because we still have 21,500 over there, and that stretch, I think we can use it to make up for that. So still nothing coming, so I doubt that's gonna come through, but we can just open up our handy document here, and let's see, we are approaching Delta now, so we want to have a look at what it is that we need to do. So before Delta, we are gonna want to start the APU below flight level 250. So below 250, we are going to start the APU. So we can't use the speed brake. Probably good idea to then go back to manage speed here, so we can do faster descent, and you can see we'll be catching up there. So once we pass 250, we are then going to start the APU. Look at all that high terrain. It looks very scary actually. I can just imagine how nerve-wracking this route must be if you are the real-world pilot that has to do this route day in, day out. I don't think you can really get used to this kind of workload. So it is asking for more drag, but let's see, we can add a little bit of a speed brake, and that's going to increase our descent rate. But let's see if we are just going to keep it below the speed there. And there we are doing the turn. So let's start the APU. So APU master and APU start. Because we are now passing flight level 250, and we then need to check the approach checklist, meaning QNH 1024, we need to set it, and we then need to have this is there. Spoilers we are going to continue to use, so we are going to keep that, and let's see that checklist. So approach checklist, bar RF QNH is set, seatbelt sign we need to switch on now, and auto brake is low, engine mode selector norm. So we are still continuing the descent down to 21,500, and that is okay. So next we go back to our document. We have now crossed Delta and 215 all the way up to Byreb, and we want to keep our ground speed between 320 and 325. So 320 and 325, we are targeting that, and we are managing it, so we are fine on that aspect. APU is available, and we have got a message from our airline. No ADC required, we are fine on that aspect. This one says that from Sanam we will have a 2 steep path. I don't know what that is based on, but we're just going to ignore that because from Sanam we are on our own in essence. So 21,500 is coming up, and there we go. And we are going to maintain that until 4 miles before Barab, and we then continue the descent into the Indus Valley, where we are going to target to reach 15,500 by Sanam. Look at those views in the mountains. And of course everything is covered in snow. So 220 knots, 21,500. APU is running. Landing lights are already on, and seatbelt sign is on as well. Flaps 3 is set, it's showing up on there. We have got everything under control so far. So next phase of the flight is we are going to BIREP. Now, configuration, approach checklist must be complete by BIREP. That is done. Transition level is 230. We've already passed that, and we set out our altimeter, and we are now going to maneuvering to turn into the Indus Valley once we are arriving into BIREP, which is that leg over there. So next altitude is 15,500, which we can set, and then we are going to start that from BIREP, and 4 nautical miles before BIREP, and we are going to set vertical speed 1500 feet per minute. So Sanam is where once the weather is too bad, then you are not supposed to continue. As you can see, yeah, but nothing is too showing up red on the weather radar, so hopefully everything will be okay. So BB4 is coming up, and we can then start our descent. The only thing we need to look out is that peak over there. So let's do now. So BB4 is coming up, and we are going to want to do 1500 feet per minute, and that is set. I have to say that looks scary from the pilot's perspective. Of course, nothing is it's not showing red on the PFD, but it just looks scary, doesn't it? Does look scary. So 1500 feet per minute, 15,500 by Sanam. We are alright. Now what are they saying? So descending into Sanam, 1500 feet per minute. Once you reach that, maintain that speed as needed, and level off at 15,500 overhead Sanam. Actually, if you need to go around, then you need to make that decision by Sanam, but other than that we are fine. Once we are approaching Sanam, then we are going to go flaps 1. So we are still 220, but looks like the aircraft is struggling to maintain that a little, so we are going to use the speed brake for that. And now we are maintaining 220 knots very nicely. And I think the weather is going to be okay. I can see this spot is only here really. So 15,500, and that's going to level off just before sunup. Very good. So far we have everything under control. Now if you haven't really followed the document, the operation properly up to here, you will find that you are going to be on a very steep path here, and I believe the first time I've done it, I haven't done this nice summary over here, and I had a hard time doing this descent and also slowing down at the same time because I was relying on that dot over there. I'm not sure why, but when it started our descent, it was saying that we are below the profile, which means that the profile was going to start your descent too late. So there is the airport over there, and then we are gonna then hug the mountain and continue the stretch over there. Make that U-turn, come around here, make a U-turn, and then land on runway 14 right. Is this one over here. So speed brake is going to remain out. And we are going to level off there, and as you can see 15,500 is coming up, and the weather is good enough to proceed past Sanam, and we will commit to the landing. So I think we are good on that aspect. We can retract. Then it says that when you are approaching Sanam, we are then going to level off at 1500, and when crossing we are going to go flaps 1. So we are gonna need to follow that track over there, so we just might as well just go heading mode now, and we can actually go flaps 1. Speed checked, flaps 1. So we are then going to hug this edge of the mountain here. So there is Sanam coming up. So we said that this is 089 track according to the manual, and from here we are gonna want to then do 12,500 in a open descent. And there are the 2 hills that we are going to go around and roll out on this side. So let's make that. There is the airport, of course. So we are just going to go on there and go 089. So basically saying on that 5 nautical mile track, if you had followed that, but that would put you in the center, which I don't really like because it's going to make that turn very tight. So then we go a little bit more to the left, and we are still descending to 12,500. Once we are abeam, then I think maybe around the center here, then we start making that turn, because we are past 5 nautical miles now. So let's do the final turn, and let's go maybe something like 300 and let's say 337 or something like that, and that does it.
Terrain ahead, pull up. Terrain ahead, pull up.
So once you cross, then you're continuing the approach, then we're supposed to go flaps 2, so we are setting flaps 2 now. And we are continuing the turn. And of course, as usual, GPWS is complaining.
Terrain ahead, pull up. Terrain ahead, pull up.
And they are just going to keep doing
Terrain
the turn.
ahead, Pull up.
until we clear that red over
Terrain
there.
ahead.
And
Pull
now we are going to go
Terrain ahead.
9,300.
Pull up. Terrain ahead. Pull up. Terrain ahead. Pull up. Terrain ahead. Pull up.
So 9,300. And there is the airport over there. So now gear down and let's do that. And flaps 3. So basically, once you have rolled out, here you go gear down and flaps 3 and 9,300. Think we are gonna want to go faster descent rate there in order to be properly stabilized. So there is the airport. So now we are gonna have to go, they said that 330 towards the village and then 350. So for now we are just going to make that right hand turn so that we stay hugging this edge of the mountain. Our target speed is about 160 knots, so we are okay still. So then we roll out. We are going to clear that ridge. $330.
2,500.
And 350. So 9,300. So autopilot off, flight directors off, and bird on. And
ahead.
now
Pull
we
Terrain
do the
ahead.
turn.
Pull up. Terrain ahead.
And
Pull
we are
up.
supposed to
Terrain
keep
ahead.
the
Pull up.
bird
Terrain ahead. Pull up.
on the horizon
Terrain ahead.
like
Pull
that.
up.
Speed, speed,
Terrain
speed.
ahead. Pull up.
And that's supposed to
Terrain
roll us
ahead.
out
Pull up.
at
Terrain
8,300.
ahead.
Speed,
Pull up.
speed.
Terrain ahead. Pull up.
Speed, speed, speed. Speed, speed, speed.
Now once you roll out, it's not over yet, because one other challenge
Speed,
is that we don't have a
speed, speed.
we don't have puppies on this runway, so it's going to be another challenge in order to target that landing properly. So rolled out a little bit off the center, but I think we are okay, and we are maintaining the descent rate. Cabin is not ready for some reason, but we are going to proceed with the landing. Landing checklist is complete. So of course, once you are here, then the rest is visual. Of course, like I mentioned, only other issue is
500.
the lack of puppies. Unless maybe someone has some terrain, not some terrain, some scenery that has got puppies working. But other than that,
100.
let's see. But at least it's a very nicely long runway, so we
30,
need
40, 30. Retard.
come on. Good. Spoilers, reverse screen, decel. Okay, it looks like we're gonna have to go all the way to the end of the runway and turn around, because the parking is that one on our left or right hand side there. So 60 knots and manual braking. We are just going to turn around here instead of rolling all the way to the end. So let's do that. I think that the runway is wide enough as well to make this U-turn, so let's make the turn here. Yep, very wide enough, so very good. So there we go, APU is already on. Only thing we're gonna need to do is maybe APU bleed, and we can go flaps 0, spoilers disarm, and that is pretty much it. We are on the ground. Then we choose the parking, which is probably parking number 2, which is the one in the center. Just say no. And that's going to be, I believe, somewhere there. I hope we are not lost. I think it's there, yeah. Okay, so this one we can stop. And what else? Once we exit the runway, then we remove TCAS, of course. But just look at that terrain. Hard to believe that we can fly an A320 here. Okay, so we make a left here. And here we go. So landing lights can come off, strobe light can come off, taxi lights on, and TCAS can go to standby. And there is our parking over there. Man, this is looking really scary. I mean, we are on the ground, but imagine if you mess up something on that procedure. You either come in too fast or you are too high, and it's kind of terrain you have to take the climb performance into account, and you don't really have radar control in here, so yeah, pretty scary. So we have to turn into the parking. Is this one in the center here? Let's just switch off the lights so that we don't blind them. Weather radar off as well. Let's just make sure first we park properly. Probably a bit skew now, but I think I'll take that. Let's just move go. So parking brake is set and flaps are up, spoilers are disarmed, APU bleed is on, and we can stop the engines. Welcome to Skardu, Pakistan. So fuel pumps off and beacon and seatbelt sign off.
Cabin crew disarmed.
Good. So we have arrived. Parking checklist, I think we are okay on that aspect. So parking checklist, parking brake or chocks. We have parking brake, engines are off, wing lights are off, fuel pumps are off. Parking checklist complete, and we can look at our arrival message from the airline. So AOC menu, receive messages, and arrival message. So arrival is at 6 on the dot. Wow, that's actually when we were scheduled to arrive, because we took off from the other side at 5 and the flight time was supposed to be an hour. We were scheduled to take off at 5. I think we took off earlier. But in any case, welcome to Skardu. I hope you enjoyed that approach. Now I know that the approach itself wasn't filled with a lot of sightseeing, like outside views and whatnot, and that's really just because the tutorial itself and the procedure itself is just so complex that you really want to be paying attention inside the cockpit, because if you miss anything, then you are gonna have to restart the approach from pretty far out. So let's hop outside the cockpit and have a look at some scenery. Right, so this is outside scenery of Skardu. The mountains are all covered in snow. I wonder what it would be like to fly in the summer here. Definitely looking forward to doing another flight into here, which is not a tutorial. And hopefully then it will be a different kind of scenery, not all this white snow. But as you can see, just look at how high those peaks are. So other thing I wanted to add is that if you're going to fly this on VATSIM, they don't have radar coverage for Skardu. So what's going to happen is that I think once you reach Byreb, then you are going to have to do position reports. So they are going to say you must advise when you are overhead Sanam, and then you have to advise again once you are downwind of the runway, and then you are going to have to advise again once you have turned final to the runway. Although it does say that we do have tower control. Of course, I haven't seen any time when there was tower controller. So yeah. So if you want to try out this approach, I suggest you have a look at that document. All you have to do is just Google Airbus A320 Skardu operations, and you are going to get it in PDF, and then you're going to have to read it in its entirety. I do recommend that you read it, and then you make some notes and come up with a rather short document like this. I really don't recommend that you use this document while doing the flight, because the scanning is going to increase the workload substantially when you will be reading things like this, like recommended flight level between Kaglo and whatever. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a bit of a different one, and I will see you on the next one.